Hi there, I'm Teri Hart, and this is The Heart of It All, a podcast about the realities of caregiving. On today's episode, we're going to hear from a person whose dad has lived with her and her family for 13 years. For many, this is a caregiving choice that is daunting, and for others, it's the only one. Today, we're going to hear about the pros, cons, good days, and bad of having a loved one move in with you in their senior years. Where one lives in our senior years will be one of the most important decisions that we make for every aspect of our lives. Proximity to family and doctors, our social lives and community, safety and finances. Location, location, location. It's a mantra often used in real estate, but it's incredibly applicable to seniors as well. According to a Stats Canada 2021 census, somewhere between 17 and 24% of seniors over the age of 65 share a home with younger generations, and that number is on the rise. Choosing to live with your aging parent can be the answer to many problems, but it can also create new challenges. Joining me today is Corie Begley. She's the Senior Vice President of one of Canada's top staffing agencies. She's a mom, wife, and grateful daughter to a spunky octogenarian who has lived with her family for 13 years. Corie and I also went to high school together, so I've had the privilege to follow her time living with her dad and kids because we're friends on Facebook. Corie, thanks so much for being here and sharing the story of you and your family.
Thanks, Teri, for inviting me. I'm excited.
So you and I mentioned we went to high school together. Shout out Chinguzi. We are about the same age, mid-50s.
Yeah.
Give people the background. How did your dad come to live with you? And what at the time was also your husband and two quite young kids?
My mom actually was quite sick, and they were living obviously in their own home. And my dad was her primary caregiver. He had retired quite early from the fire department at 57, lucky man. So he was afforded the luxury, I guess, in a way, to support my mom when she was quite ill. And they were in their own home, independent. And I think what was actually happening was it was becoming too much for my dad to take care of her. So, every time I would go over to visit, my mom was always in bed or she was sleeping, and it was very short visits and everything's fine. Finally got to the stage where he was really unable to. So we made the decision collectively as a family for them to move in, including my mom, into our home. And that way we could offer that care for my mom on her final stages, as well as the support for my dad. So that happened. They were with us about a year and a bit before my mother had passed away.
A year and a bit. So you were really in a caregiving role for your mom.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other podcast. Did your mom die at home?
She died actually. She was cycling in and out, and she died in the hospital in palliative care. But we actually had created in our office at the time a hospital room for her, and then we had all the supports coming in because my dad wasn't really utilizing those support systems. When the ladies were coming to their house, he was making them coffee and tea, and he was more catering to the ladies versus using it as sort of a respite care for himself. So when they came to our house, we set it up where he had to go and have some respite. I was doing night shifts with my mom. We were having nurses coming in, but she actually was cycling in and out so badly that the final stages for her life was actually in palliative care, that he made the decision to put her in. Yeah. Yeah.
I am so sorry about the loss of your mom. Your mom was a force.
She was forced to reckon with. And it's so unfortunate. She suffered a heart attack just when she retired. And then and they had a great life because, like I said, he retired so young that they were able to go to Florida and spend the winters there and do really fun stuff. And then when she got quite sick, that all had to stop. And then, like I said, he turned into a primary caregiver for her. And being the person that he was doing it very privately and not sort of reaching out to say, hey, I need some extra help. And then when we realized that, we brought them in. And to going back with the kids, yes, they were very young at that particular time. There really we didn't sit down with them. It was just a decision that we made just because we had to, I think, and brought them in.
So when you say we made the decision as a family to have your mom and dad move in with you, your husband, and your two kids, when you say as a family, is that you and your husband, or is that you, your husband, your mom, and your dad? Like, I'm interested in the idea of where your core family of your choice to be married and then where your family of your mom and dad, like, how does that all blend in the decision at that point?
I think, to be honest with you, to be totally transparent, I don't think we really thought too much other than it was just we needed to do it. I don't think we sat down and analyzed it. I don't think we sat down and we said, okay, we're not going to do it. What's the pros and cons? It was just, we need to do this. So that's why we ended up just bringing them in. It was a very quick transition. My parents put their house up for sale and my dad moved in while they were selling the house. Like we set everything up and it was within a week that we had actually had them in the house and that was it. And it was, I think the children being so young, I think they were 6 and 12, adapted very, very well to it and knew, I think, obviously my son, who was a little bit older, understood what was happening. My younger daughter didn't as much, but I think just as a whole, and my husband was very, very supportive, like even to the point where we lived in a house. They didn't have a separate room other than my mom had the hospital bed that was there. So it was just having people coming into the home every single night, me doing sort of night shifts. And when you're taking care of somebody that's really quite sick, all the things that has to happen with them, like you're doing things that you never thought you'd have to do with your mom, but you do it. So it was, I don't even think at any point that we even stopped to consider pros and cons. It was just, we're doing it regardless.
So you make that decision, you get through a very difficult year and a half, you lose your
Yeah.
mom. At that point, when is it decided dad's going to stay?
I think dad came to us and I recall him coming to us and he just asked, he said he did sell his house. And I'll tell you the reason why he sold his house. He was thinking long-term and longevity. If my mother would have survived, that he would have had to put her in a home. And he was looking for the financial implications of having to put her in a home, which is why he wanted to sell his home so that he would have the means to put her in that care. So that's why his decision was to sell very quickly. So again, he didn't have a home to go to. And he just asked us. He had been there for a year and a bit and he'd already, he was already set up in his own room in our home. And he just asked, he said, do you mind if I stay? Absolutely. And that was it. It was just a conversation. It wasn't even a conversation that I had with my husband or the kids. It was just, he was already there. He was already integrated into our world. Just stay. And absolutely, we let him stay.
So at any point, did you have a conversation with your husband and go, oh, maybe we should have talked about this? This is like, we went from a family of 4 to a family of 5 after a transition period, or was it just so obvious to you?
I think it was obvious. And to be honest with you, my husband comes from a family that this is a normalized, as well, because his mother does live with his younger sister. So it is something that he's used to as well, that, your parents will live with you in certain situations. So it was never really, like I said, and I don't think it forced it on him. I don't think it was just never a conversation. This was just a natural progression that he's going to stay with us.
I lost my dad August 1st of 2024.
Yeah.
And so my mom's on her own now. My mom, if my dad had have been on his own in any way, shape, or form, God bless him, he would not have been capable. He could make some toast and he could make some soup but my dad would not have been well living on his own. And was that part of the consideration at all, Corie, that your dad was just going to be so much better living with you and the family?
Maybe psychologically, maybe not, operationally. He's very, as you can see, you've seen him on social media and things like that. He's 87. The guy is intact and he's still very active, very regimented. That comes from being a firefighter. Guy's up at 6 o'clock in the morning and off he goes. I think for him, it was more just being connected and staying within that sort of structure, that family structure. Again, he falls into, like, he's 87. He waits till I come home to make dinner. He kind of likes that sort of care part of it. But again, he does all of our laundry. I'm embarrassed to say this, but he does all of our laundry. This is really embarrassing to say. He changes our bed sheets every Thursday and he washes the bed sheets. Like he's so regimented in what he does and how he contributes to the family. I would be lost. I'm going to say this honestly. If I didn't have him, we'd have a lot of dirty laundry, let's put it that way. I think for him, it was more just a psychological, because they had been married, they'd been together for so many years. And for him to be alone and facing the world alone, I don't know how at that particular time would he have been able to do it. Now, I have had the conversation with him after the mourning and the grieving and life got on kind of thing. Would he have, wanted to get a companion or maybe do something alone? And he was very, very truthful and said no. Like he said, your mother was the love of my life. And he has a very active social life as well. Like he still goes to the theater. He still meets with some friends to go for lunch. And like he's fairly, fairly active and social. And he still sees my parents and his friends, when they were had couple friends, he still sees them occasionally. They come to visit and stuff like that. And he said he was very adamant. No, he didn't want to have a companion. And that was back, he was back in the 70s, right? So that was kind of interesting.
It's interesting because, I think that for many people, they find themselves in this situation making the decision to have a parent live with them or a loved one live with them, that it's coming on the heels of a loss. It's coming on the
Yeah.
heels of the loss of that person's partner or spouse. I wonder if having him there and knowing he was going to stay there just as an immediate, if that helped everybody get through the immediate grieving process of losing your mom.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it did because and a little bit different than some people when they lose a parent. My mom had sort of a long period until she passed. So there was a lot of time for me anyways, maybe not so much for my father, but for me and the family and the kids, we had that time to kind of process it. And then when we actually converted and made the decision, or my father made the decision to put her in palliative care, we also had that time to say goodbye and to say everything. So we had that period of time. There was a lot of time that we were able to marinate in the upcoming death of her, so to speak. The aftermath afterwards, I think my dad, he had a little bit of a harder time. Like even when she was in palliative care, people were coming up to visit her and he was worried that she was, they were bringing her chips and sandwiches that had sodium in it. And we're like, okay. My husband brought up, red wine for her to have, and he was all upset that she was, it's like, okay. So he hadn't, he hadn't quite got there. And I think after the fact, when she did pass, there was that mourning period for him that he required. And it took a little bit of time for him to do that. I think if he was on his own doing that mourning period, he needed to have us around him. We were very instrumental in allowing him to grieve because he was still able, like the kids were still having to go to school. The kids still had, they still had their little bickers and their fights and things still needed to be done. And that allowed him, not to separate it, but allowed him to continue to move on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, being in a very active home with,
Yep.
two kids, to your point, who are going to school and still active and have this practice or that practice, and you're working and your husband's working. It's like the world keeps going on. And I
Yeah.
think that that can be helpful to
Yeah.
some in the grieving process. So we lose your mom. It's an immediate obvi that dad's sticking around. Dad's living, it's going to be his address. And
Yep.
were there any physical considerations made at that point in the house? Like, does he have a nanny suite? Is he just in the same bedroom floor as you guys?
Yep, he's in the same world as we are. Yes. At the time when we were in Brampton, our house was quite large in Brampton. So it was one of the older homes that were very segregated. So he had his own bedroom upstairs with his own bathroom, and then he had a sitting room upstairs. But he always liked to be downstairs. He had his own TV room downstairs, and then we had a full basement. So there was a little bit of a separation. And then when we moved out of Brampton, we moved into a home that's not necessary. It wasn't as large as the one in Brampton. And we are very much he has his own room upstairs, his own bathroom. He has a sitting room upstairs, but he still likes to come downstairs, and it's open concept. So, he likes to we like to watch TV together, and he's very big on news. He's very much into what's going on in the world. And then we all have to have a conversation about it at dinner. And we're probably a little too traditional in the way that we always have the sit down meals. So we still have dinner, depending on what time, but we all sort of sit down as a family.
Do you think he would do that if he wasn't there?
We always did. Yes. Yeah.
So that would be that is a core tenet that you would have whether your dad was living with you or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And again, when the kids get older, like it's usually one of them doesn't live at home anymore, but we still have the sit down dinners. And because we're living with an 87-year-old, it's usually at 5:30, quarter to 6 at night when we're having dinner.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. My
Yeah.
dinner time gets shifted frequently, like more significantly now than it used to also. I do think that there is something for people that it's the idea of doing this is like, yeah, I can see this working. I can see it totally possible. I lived with my parent for however long. Versus the reality of it. Your kids were approaching teenage years, which can bring challenges. Your dad is from a different generation, probably raised you differently than you're raising your kids. How was that to have those three very distinct generations and equally as importantly, different styles of parenting under the same roof?
Yes. And we've faced it a couple, especially when the kids were younger, just exactly that. I think he would insert himself into when I was disciplining or my husband was disciplining the children and we're dealing with stuff, because we lived communal, so open, he was always there. So he did insert himself in a few times into things, and we kind of had to sort of back off and talk to him about it. And this is our world, these are our kids. But he gets along very, very well with both the kids. Well, that's a whole other story too. It's another podcast. I had my nephew living with us for 4 years as well. He has very good relationships with all three of his grandchildren. But again, especially when the kids were younger, arguments would happen, things like that. He would insert himself into it, and he would get himself. So it was not necessarily us having, a conversation with the child. We were also trying to navigate having my father in there as well. And, a couple of times I've had to sort of say, "Oh, you need to let me deal with this, or let us deal with it."
All of the lines, all of the way we look at relationship lines, they're kind of blurred a bit, right? Like, he's not just grandpa, and
Yeah.
he's not just your dad. Like, there's so many kind of it's a bit of a lava lamp of family relationships when you're cohabitating in that way. Is that fair to suggest, Corie?
Yeah, I would say definitely. Absolutely. And it's not like he has a separate entrance and he goes and he has his own time. Like, he is immersed in our world, which, like I said, I think he's a very easy person to get along with and cohabitate with. My husband's an easy person to cohabitate and live with, right? So it's not like there's a dichotomy in their personalities. They're very, very easy both together to sort of live with. So I didn't have to worry about that. So like I said, more so, not so much now because the kids are older, but when they were just that age where everything was, a teenage daughter or preteen daughter, where it's just everything is drama, right? Um, that was kind of touch and go there for a while.
Yeah, there also must have been times where you were just, like, thanking your lucky stars and so grateful to have another adult in the house. Like, to
Yeah.
have somebody if you and your husband were going out, it's to have a little bit of a, like, a deep bench of adults in the house can make a big difference.
Yeah, and he was great. Like, through those years too, when I couldn't do the pickups at school or I was running late, he was instrumental in that. He still drives. He still drives to this day. So, um, he was very supportive and instrumental. Didn't have to, it was just, hey, can you, absolutely not a problem. Or he would be taking the kids to school. And that was his sort of thing. That was where he bonded with my daughter, McKenna. He would go and take her to school every single morning, right? But again, she wasn't on time. So there was always that sort of where I'm a little bit more, okay, she'll get to school when she gets to school, but he's so regimented. If they don't leave at 7 o'clock or 7:30, then, that stressed him out. So I get it. I understand it, but I would have been a little bit more lax on getting her there on right at the start, if you know what I mean. Right.
What a gift though, right? Like, what a gift to give your kids to allow them to know their grandpa in that way. Have you
Yeah.
had the chance to talk to your kids about this dynamic? Do they see that it's unique? Do they recognize that it's special?
I think, to be honest with you, because they were so young when he moved in, they haven't really known anything different. Let's put it that way. I don't think they have a core memory of prior to when Nana and Papa lived with us, and even Papa after that. I think in some cases, maybe earlier on, they would take advantage of him, because he's there, and because, oh, do you have $20? I can't find my, things like that, right? So I think they figured him out fairly quickly. I think now both of them, all three kids actually, and I'm talking about my nephew too, who did live with us for some time. They have, like I mentioned, they have very, very good relationships with him, and individually good relationships, not just sort of collectively, but individually as well. They all have their sort of special things that they do. My dad and McKenna love singing in the rain. So Jake and my dad have, they bond over comic books and stories and stuff like that. And then Angus and my dad bond over soccer or football, right? Like, we call it football in Scotland, so it's football. And they all have their own little special things that they like to do with him. But I honestly don't think that they would know any different. He's always just been in their world. And I think they understand how special they are. And I think they also forget that now he's 87. So I think they always kind of feel, and that's kind of one of the things that, and I've never spoke to them about it, the fact that he is starting to slow down. His health may start to decline at some point. His cognition might start to decline. It hasn't, but you never know. And how are we going to prepare for that? Right. Because they are so close to him. They are so close.
Oh, the things that we have to think about. And that's really, the impetus for this podcast is when we are lucky enough to still have seniors in our life and we want to be helpful to them and we want to be aware of what's going on in their life. Part of that is being close enough to be able to see what's happening with them. And your dad is literally right in your home with you. This is super personal, so just talk about whatever you're comfortable with, Corie, but I think it's an important facet to this. You have a brother, he lives overseas,
Yep.
just like my brother lives overseas, we're very similar in that way. How do you most equitably handle the financial component of having your dad live with you?
Well, like I mentioned, my dad was a firefighter, so he has a pension. He also has a pension from Scotland because he was a firefighter in Scotland, and he also has half of my mother's pension when she passed away, and she worked for the city of Brampton as well. So I'm going to be totally transparent. I've never gotten into finances with him with regards to where he is. I know that he is okay.
Does he pay you, like, rent to live there? Is there money exchanged between you guys?
He doesn't pay us rent, but what he'll do is, and I've never asked him to pay rent, but what he'll do is he'll give money to the kids. He'll give extremely generous gifts to the kids. He will all of a sudden buy a dishwasher if the dishwasher's not working, or he'll just do like Christmas, and he's very extravagant with his gifts, and it's usually monetary. He gives the kids probably monthly about $1,200 between the three of them. Like he very, very, yeah. Like he'll just say, "Hey, can you e-transfer money over to Jake, or can you transfer money over?" He's very, very good that way. So, and then he'll grocery shop and he'll do stuff like that. So he contributes. I think by doing all of our laundry and my beds, I think he's paying for himself, and he doesn't have to worry about that.
Paying for
Yeah,
himself and so much, like, my goodness, I hate changing my bed. I just hate
yeah.
it.
No, so do I. I'm not gonna lie. Like I honestly, I have not done laundry, full load of laundry in 13 years, and I hate to say that, but
You
yeah, he
shouldn't
makes my
hate to say it. You shouldn't hate to say it. I mean, I think that that is the thing that is so interesting about this. And one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure anybody who's thinking of this as an option for them and their family, there are challenges, but there are a lot of pros to this too. It's
yeah.
not just doing the right thing. So, what has been kind of surprising in the pros column of having your dad with you?
I think the fact that he's so agile, he's so physical, he's very regimented, like I say, and he likes to keep to a schedule. The pros is that he's so active and that he fills his day with his activities, and he fills his day like he reads books, he does crosswords, he putters around and does what he has to do. He used to do the lawn until it got too much for him. The pros is, I think, as a role model to the children, they see what he's like. They see his work ethic. And that's also transpired with myself as well. Like they see that I come from my dad, and they see my work ethic, and they see that, but they're seeing it firsthand with him. He's not just sitting on the couch watching TV all day and lying in bed. Like he is up and at it, and he's very, very engaged. He's very engaged with the kids. He's extremely intelligent, and has an absolute wicked sense of humor. So he keeps us on our toes. He keeps us going. So the pros is, and he's very easy to live with. Very, very easy to live with. I think if it was maybe my mom that was living with us, we'd have a different story. But it's definitely he's very, very easy to live with. So that makes it so much easier. So the pros outweigh the cons for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you might have a hard time coming up with any cons.
The cons are, I do have one con, and you'll probably maybe I think anybody that's in their mid-50s might relate to this, is the thermometer setting on the house. And yes, so that is yeah, so that's about it. That's our only con.
He likes it a little warmer than you do, Corie?
A little warmer. Yep. And yeah, so we have a little chit chat about that sometimes, for sure. For sure.
In the grand scheme of cons versus all those pros you
Yeah,
just listed, I think you're coming out quite ahead.
I am. I think I am. Yeah.
13 years is a really long time to live with anybody. But in this case, it's like reliving.
Yeah.
You're reliving with your dad. And I joke that whenever I go to visit my mom, I forget how to do dishes. Like I lose my ability to adult when I'm in my mother's presence. I don't
Yeah.
know what it is. I'm sure a therapist could help me with that. I don't know if I want the help though. How are you and how have you been successful at creating that new dynamic of it's not exactly father-daughter, but you both have adult responsibilities living in the house together.
Yeah. I think we have a really good relationship. I think we always had a really good relationship. We have a good relationship now. I think he sees me as an adult, as an equal. And I think he respects, and sometimes I feel like he's kind of in awe of some of the stuff I do because I can navigate things. I can take on a lot of stress. I can, like I think most women can, and I can compartmentalize things and I get things done. And I think he really, really appreciates that because there's some things that he'll ask me to do and then I get it done for him and he's like, "Oh, that's great." And he'll make a comment, "Oh, you're just like your mom. You're just like your mom." Like he sees that in me. I don't think he treats me as a child or as I don't think he treats me as a young daughter. I think he treats me as a mature woman that I am, right? And I think he respects that.
I think for people who might be considering this option, what are some conversations that they should think about having with their parent or loved one before they move in?
I think it's a little different in obviously our situation because we were kind of put into it and there wasn't really a lot of conversations and parameters put in place. But I think you might want to establish just the living environment to understand how the boundaries are with the living. If they're going to be within the world and cohabitating, do you want them to have a separate area where they can have their own time or are they going to be immersed with the family? And again, I think just if there's young children involved or even teenage children involved, just sort of navigating around the parenting aspect of that and who's the parent and what to get involved with, things like that. That's the only thing coming from my experience that I would say would be something you'd want to sort of clarify first.
Love, those are really, really important things, especially the parenting aspect, I think. And even I think if the kids aren't living there, like at any point, like I'm the parent, you're not, wherever the kids are at in life.
Exactly.
What do you know now, Corie, that you didn't know when you first had your dad move in? What have you learned about the experience of living with him that you're either glad to know or you wish you had have known before?
I think his consistency. I think that's it, and it's hard to describe this. Just how consistent he is, which is a wonderful feature and it's a wonderful quality for somebody to be so consistent. But he's consistent every single day. So it's like that regimented up at 6. Oh, consistent he was in his day to day habits and rituals. So it's if he reads the newspaper every single morning, if the newspaper is not there, then his day kind of goes a little sideways. I'll usually go if they for whatever we live in a rural area, so if the newspaper doesn't get there, I'll run out and grab him a newspaper because I know it kind of sets him off if it doesn't do that, right? So there's a little bit of a balance there, but he's so regimented. Like so it's his own personal rituals that he has that keeps his day scheduled. And I think I wasn't aware of how ritualistic he was in his day-to-day habits. I appreciate them. I think they're wonderful. I wish I could be like that, but I'm a little, he doesn't start watching TV to a certain time. And I think he feels if you're watching TV at 9 o'clock in the morning, then there's a problem, right? Or if you're lying, not that he would ever say that, but there's sometimes, you've just worked all week. You just want to catch up and watch a show, right? And it's okay if you watch it at 9 o'clock in the morning when you have a coffee.
Corie, my life is watching TV shows for 30 years, so I've got
Yeah,
no judgment about anybody sitting and watching anything at any
exactly.
point.
Yeah. There's times I will feel guilty. It's terrible to say, but I'll feel guilty because I'm not matching his amount of energy. He's 87 and I'm sitting watching a movie at 9 o'clock in the morning having a coffee, right?
You must be so, so grateful that you can keep an eye on him at 87. Like when he was kind of, keeping the reality of your mom's level of care that she needed and trying to weather that storm on his own and protect you from that. You must be so grateful now that you know that day to day, you will be able to spot
Oh,
any change.
and actually last year he had a heart attack, and I think if he wasn't living with us, he probably would have passed away in his sleep because he was actually coughing through the night, and I could hear him, and I went in and, asked him if he was okay, asked him if he wanted some water, and, him being a firefighter or a retired firefighter, he still has those sort of intuitions, and he tried to go back to sleep and they came back and he says, "No, I think I need to go to the hospital." So I don't think if I was there to go in and have that conversation, check on him to see if he was okay, he probably would have just tried to manage it, through the night and maybe have fallen back asleep and who knows what the outcome would have been. And again, navigating through when he had that heart attack, I advocated for him with regards to getting the surgery and dealing because he's the type of person very old school. I don't know if your mom's like this as well. The doctors always know best and they just kind of wait for the doctor to phone back. And they still wait and they still wait. And if they don't hear something back, it's okay. It's going to come. It's going to come. I'm a little different. I'm like, okay, let's be a little more proactive, call, get it set up. And because during that sort of waiting period for the surgery, his health was declining. So I kind of took charge and made a couple phone calls, got him in a little bit quicker and got him into the surgery, right? I don't think he would have been able to navigate that because of his personality. He wouldn't have done that as fast, right?
I wonder, you've talked about your dad's routine. You've talked about how active he is. You've talked about how stimulated mentally he still is. Do you feel like you are in a caregiving role with him?
I wouldn't say a caregiving role. I would say how would I classify it? More of an overseer, I guess, just sort of overall, just kind of navigating to make sure things are going as it needs to be. He's very, like I said, he's very, very self-sufficient. So it's just sort of, if he needs, like, he has something going on with his eye this week and he needs to go. And I don't like him driving, obviously, when there's stuff like that. So making sure either I take him or somebody else takes him in the family to make sure he goes to his appointments, make sure that he's following up on stuff. So I think it's more of a collaborator in his world right now. I think as he progresses with age and obviously declined, it might change. Obviously, it's going to change. Yeah.
Love that idea of being a collaborator.
Yeah.
I'm totally going to steal that for this podcast going forward because the caregiving that I did with my dad was much different than the caregiving I'm doing now with my mom. My mom, I am her collaborator. Do you recommend this for people, Corie? When we're at that age, we know lots of people who are faced with challenges with parents getting older, parents' health not being great, some parents whose financial situation doesn't allow them to make certain decisions. Would living with parents be something you would recommend?
From my experience, because it has been a very positive experience, and even when my mom was living with us as well, it was a positive, although it was a negative what she was going through. It was a positive experience to have her and be able to care for her in her final stages. And I think my whole family, including my husband and the kids, I think they would say it's a positive experience for us. I think overall it has been very positive. I would recommend it. Yeah.
I love it so much. I think it's such an eye-opening thing to hear from somebody who is directly living it in all of its forms. Thank you so much for being here, Corie. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate being asked, and good luck with your podcast.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Hart of It All, a podcast about navigating the realities of caregiving. The podcast was created, executive produced, and is hosted by me, Teri Hart. Co-executive produced by Carrie, Hayden, and Jess Carroll of 6 of 1 Digital. Music provided by Riverside. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at The Hart of It All Pod, and let us know, are you living with a parent or senior in your household? What are the pros and what are the challenges? Is this something you would consider and want for your family? If you like the podcast, please subscribe and share this episode with someone who you think could benefit from these conversations. Also, consider giving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please, always, take care.